Okay, so I can sit here and talk about how I haven't uploaded since October. I can sit here and talk about how I have so many plans for this channel and how I have a lot of plans with Player's Choice and how excited I am for 2023. But we're just going to go out there and do it. I mean, there's no way to convince you, the viewer, to subscribe to my channel without actually putting in the work and showing you that I am serious about this. I really want to create something special here with the Tegan Randolph Show, whatever I want to call this moving forward. But I think the best way to kick back making content on YouTube is to talk about a team that I have a slight sentimental value towards. Not saying that I have a fandom towards them per se, but I would say because I was born and raised in this city, I've seen the fan base go through the torture that they have. And you've clicked on the video and you know what team I'm talking about. It's the Houston damn Texans. You could take out the damn if you want, but I really don't care because every single time I hear a news story or I read about the Texans, it's just the one word comes to mind. And it's just, damn, what is this team doing? From top to bottom, I'm not a fan of the McNair family, and I'll proudly say that. I think that the ownership needs to be changed. I think coaching has been a confusing choice, per se. Not to say Lovie Smith is a bad coach, but why would he take this job and he hasn't maximized his players' potential, or he hasn't elevated the floor or the ceiling of this team whatsoever? Not to say that they had a high one to begin with, but it seems like they want to stay at this course, and I think they will stay at this course if they draft a quarterback at #1 overall, which is the point of this entire video. Because I can sit here and roast how terrible this team is, from the offensive line outside of Laramie Tunsil, from the defensive front seven. I could torch them. It's way too easy because they're the #1 team that is at the very bottom. They're the bottom feeder of the NFL. They are the worst team in the NFL for good reason. And it's presumptually known that they're going to go quarterback, or at least that's the consensus right now. Obviously, things change so much as we lead up into the draft. I mean, players will rise, players will fall, overthinking happens, smoke screens, plenty of things will be said before that draft actually happens. But right now, as we are in 2023, very early into January, it's kind of known that it's going to be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Before, like if you asked me a week ago, I would have said it's Bryce Young or bust. CJ Stroud had a fantastic playoff game. I mean, I'll put a stat line. The biggest thing is not because he played well, it's because he played well out of structure, and that was his biggest negative moving forward. But we'll talk about CJ Stroud in a minute and why I feel I'll get to the take that I'm about to say, because I tend to ramble on, and we'll go around. We'll get there. The Texans, I don't think, should go quarterback, and this is why. As much as I love Bryce Young, I think as a prospect, he's one of the best quarterback prospects you could really ask for. Outside of his frame and how tall he is, he's like everything you could ask for out of a quarterback. He can play out of structure. He can play in structure. He has a cannon of an arm. He has elite touch, elite accuracy, elite anticipation. Everything you could ask for out of a quarterback prospect. Just the size is a concern. Then you have CJ Stroud, who does a fantastic job with touch, anticipation, accuracy, pretty good arm strength. But the concern is he can't play out of structure, and he has great size. Those are your top two guys. You're not going to go with a Will Levis. You're not going to go with an Anthony Richardson with the #1 overall pick. That's just not going to happen. So these are the top two guys that you're looking at when it comes to the quarterback position. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball, because I think those are the only guys that you could consider with the #1 overall pick, unless there's a top tier like left tackle. But they have that. They have Laramie Tunsil. They've paid a lot to get Laramie Tunsil. So what do you look at with the defensive side of the ball? And like the offensive side of the ball, you have two monsters, Javon Carter and Will Anderson Jr., an elite outside rusher and an interior defensive lineman that can rush the quarterback, which is a rare commodity in the NFL. That is a ton of value. So what do you do here? Well, let's look at the quarterback position. The problem with Bryce Young is his size and frame, and you're putting him into a position where the offensive line is terrible. I think a lot of the options at the top 10, they have terrible offensive lines. That's just truth of it. But the problem I'm having with Bryce Young is I just don't see him excelling in this situation. I don't think there's a lot of quarterbacks that could excel with the Texans right now in the NFL. That's just the thing. Unless you're like a Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert, I just don't see any quarterback doing well in this situation. So what is the best benefit for putting Bryce Young in this spot, right? We put him in, say that he has a subpar rookie year, and that's expected. We have a couple anomalies over the past 5 years of these rookie quarterbacks having elite seasons. I don't think any quarterback from this class is going to have a above average elite season, unless maybe CJ Stroud goes to the Colts, which I could see potentially going well, especially if they get a good head coach coming onto this team. But I'm more looking at Bryce Young in the Texans situation. I think it'd be a subpar rookie year, and you're really risking injury with Bryce Young, putting him into these terrible offensive lines. And that's the biggest concern with him. And I won't pick a player because of sole injury, especially with the number 1 overall pick. But you have to look at every angle because you can't miss on this. You genuinely, as a franchise, cannot miss on this, or you're going to continue to be a bottom feeder franchise like the Browns did for 2 decades. And the thing with Bryce Young is he reminds me of his frame of a Kyler Murray. I don't think the play styles are 1-to-1, but as a frame, they're very similar. Bryce Young is going to come in at 5'10", sub 190, maybe even worse than that. Kyler is just about the same size. I think that even Bryce Young is skinnier than a Kyler Murray. And you could say he could bulk up, but that's a big ask out of a guy who uses his elusiveness and his ability to be quick as one of his best traits. So let's look on the flip side. Say you don't want to worry about injury as much, but you go get CJ Stroud. The problem with CJ Stroud this year is he doesn't do well under pressure. Now, I'm not going to use the anomaly of the Georgia game as the standard. It's a good sign. These quarterbacks can develop. These guys can handle the pressure at a much faster pace as they get used to the NFL speed. But it is a concern that if he's struggling this much with the college speed, how long is it going to take CJ Stroud to get used to the NFL speed? Plus, Ohio State quarterbacks, we could talk about the narrative around them. I'm not really going to talk about it because Justin Fields is excelling. And I think that Ohio State quarterbacks get a bad rap just because of the school that they rep. Ryan Day doesn't set up an offense that's best suited for quarterbacks. And not to mention, CJ Stroud has had a plethora of fantastic NFL receivers at his right there in his palm. And I think that when you look at CJ Stroud, it is a concern that you are going to go pick a guy at the number 1 overall pick who I think has a capped ceiling. I think he could be a damn good quarterback. I'm not going to just say that CJ Stroud can't be a top 5 guy, but I think at his best, he could be a borderline top 10, which is nice, which is a good, solid thing. But here is the biggest caveat on why I would wait on a quarterback is because of the 2024 class. Caleb Williams, I think, has top 3 potential. Drake May, I think, has top 5 potential. Quinn Ewers has a top 5 talent just because of his arm alone. He's a freak of nature talent-wise who could definitely develop under Sarkisian. Those 3 guys make up the entire 2024 class, plus plenty of others. And you're not going to be putting a guy into a situation that's going to succeed in 2023. Why not accept that you're going to suck? The Texans are going to suck no matter what they do with this number 1 overall pick. But why not go get a defensive guy who I think is an elite guy in Will Anderson, or an uber elite guy in Javon Carter. Both of those guys are 1A, 1B to me. You pick and choose who you think is going to best fit your team because I think it's going to benefit them in the long term. You are trying to set up a contender in the AFC, one of the most difficult things to do right now, just because you have Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and plenty others, Justin Herbert. I can keep going. These elite quarterbacks that you have to contend. We watched Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes go toe-to-toe in a playoff game. And you can say that people overreact to that playoff game because it's mentioned in practically every video when you talk about draft comps for quarterbacks. But that's what you need to have to handle the firepower and get to a Super Bowl in the AFC. You're not in the NFC. You are in the AFC with these top-tier quarterbacks. So why not make a big swing at a guy that you can put in a better position, set up this draft to better set up for 2024. It may seem crazy to do. It may seem a little out of pocket, honestly, because you don't want to miss on Bryce Young or CJ Stroud if you're an NFL team. But when you look at the context of what the number 1 overall pick holds, especially with the Houston Texans and the situation that surrounds them, why not build up the defense like what the 49ers did? And at the worst case, if you build up this defense to end up being elite, potentially with a Derek Stingley, who I think will have a bounce back sophomore year, maybe you set up to be a 49ers-like team in the AFC, which is a tall task to ask of because it's one of the best rosters created in the entire NFL, maybe the best NFL roster. But you have to start somewhere if you're going to be Houston, and you haven't contended maybe in your entire franchise. Maybe you had that 1 year where you were going to the AFC Championship. I can't remember which year that was, or it was the divisional round when they had, I believe, Matt Schaub, and then they got blown out by the Patriots. I just, you had Deshaun Watson, a franchise quarterback. Things were looking bright. DeAndre Hopkins. I feel for Texans fans, man. Like, you got absolutely dismantled, and you had the terrible PR surrounding this franchise, and it's still there, and there's just bad taste in your mouth with this franchise. And I just concerned that you're gonna put a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud into a situation that they just don't have a chance in. Now, these guys are ultra competitors. They could develop, they could be these great guys. Maybe injury is being blown out of proportion, but in all honesty, why not develop a good roster around for a guy like Caleb Williams, who I think is a lock to be a number one, top 3 guy, and you're going to be in that top 5 pick range anyways. Why not cut your losses and build a good situation around you? You have Davis Mills, who could potentially be a good 3-year starter, or potentially you have a good backup on your hands. Go take a swing on a guy like a backup and try to just accept that this offense is not going to be good next year, regardless of who the quarterback is, whether it's Bryce Young or Davis Mills. I don't know if the needle moves that much. Talent-wise, it moves a lot because Bryce Young is clearly a better prospect than Davis Mills was. But the thing is I just don't see any quarterback succeeding in 2023. And then you move to 2024, where you're just struggling to build around a quarterback that could potentially be out or potentially just not be in the best situation. I think it's very difficult to build a situation around Bryce Young without having uber elite talent at the wide receiver position, and you have to have a good offensive line, which is better said than done. Whereas you could try to build something early and bring in a guy who I think is a potential top 5 quarterback. This is projecting a lot, and I understand that, and I completely get if the Texans go quarterback. And I know I've rambled on and I've gone back and forth, but I'm just saying the point of this entire video is if you are a Texans fan, let me know what you would do. Let me know if you were in the position of the general manager, what would you do? And first of all, change the uniforms. That's the first thing I would probably do. But would you go quarterback, or is it crazy to go with a guy like Will Anderson or Javon Carter? I do apologize. It could be Jalen Carter. I'm very, very sorry if it's Jalen Carter. Now it's just going through my brain. Listen, guys, I'm rusty. We're at 13 minutes already, so thank you so much for watching. Welcome back to the channel. And if you like my videos, you like my TikToks, which are linked into the bio, go check out Player's Choice Gridiron. I am on there every Sunday. We talk about college football for a couple hours, so go have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and welcome back. And we are here in 2023.